Alright, today we're going to talk about is completing the square to a quadratic equation. So when we complete the square is where we take the quadratic equation like this and we turn it into this format. So part of completing the square is knowing what the b value, what it turns into here. So if you were to look at x squared minus 2x plus 1, if we were to factor this out, you would have AC is 1, and then your B is this value. So we know we're going to get -1 and -1 when we factor it. So one way to do this is to write it as that squared. So if you notice, there's going to be a pattern happening here when you look here and here. And so let's look at this part. So if you were to go here and do your x, we know that it needs to be 25 here. That's a horrible 25. Wow. There we go. Let's try that again. So it needs to get 25 here and a -10 here. Well, the only way to do that would be a -5 and a -5. So when you rewrite this, you're going to get x minus 5 squared. Now if you notice, -10 and -5, with both times what we were doing here is we're taking our b value and we're just dividing it by 2, and that's going to help us get this part of the equation. Alright, so I want you to try this one, factor it down to figure how you can get it to this format. So go ahead and try that one. Alright, now to find the c value and to make it a perfect square, which is the square of the binomial. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, and remember I said we're going to divide that by 2. When you divide that by 2, you're going to get +3. So we just did 6 divided by 2, which equals 3. Well, to get this value, you would take all of that and square it, which is 9. So your c would equal 9. And the reason why, if you were to go, okay, there we go. So x plus 3 times x plus 3, you're going to get x squared plus 6x plus 9. So that's your c value right there. Alright, so now let's look here. What we're going to do is we're going to look at our b value, which is -8, and we're going to divide that by 2, which is going to give you this. So -8 divided by 2 gives you -4, square it, and that's going to give you 16. So we know our c would be 16. Alright, so remember, divide by 2, and then square it, and that's going to equal your c value. Alright, so now we're going to talk about completing the square. Oops. So you're going to take and you're going to rewrite it. But this time, before we always wanted to solve it to equal it to 0, this time we're going to have the constant on the right. So you're basically subtracting c to the other side. So in this case, we're going to add 6 because we're moving the c to the other side. So now, factor only the terms left. So we're basically ignoring this for now, and we're only looking at this side. So when we take this side, we're factoring out a 2. We've got this left over. So now we're going to take this, our b value, divided by 2, and that's going to give us this part. Then when we square it, we're going to get the c part. And what you do to this side, you have to do to this side. Remember, this is really a 2 times 1 because it's 2 times 1. Now once you got that part, then we can go ahead, divide by 2, and then get this by itself, and then solve it. So you'll get your answers here. So it looks very complicated. Once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad, but it does look very complicated to start. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this equation, and if you notice it's equal to 0, we don't want that. We're going to subtract the 8. So we're left with 2x squared plus 12x now that we've got that, we're going to factor out a 2. So I'm only left with x squared minus 6x. Now, I like to draw a line for your c value, and I put that there. And then I always do equals, and I draw a line on this side because we need to keep it balanced. Okay? So, if I were to take negative 6 and divide by 2, I'm going to get negative 3. So that's your b value. But if I were to square it, I get positive 9, which is your c value. So you can actually do your first step, you can kind of skip down and then go to that step. Now if you notice, I've got plus 9 here, but I have plus 18 over here. Don't forget, it's 2 times 9 for there. Now what I did is I ended up drawing diagrams of this because I said we have 2 of this and we needed to figure out how many will actually make a square. So I drew a little model here. So each of these are your x's, and then these are your constants. So what we did is we have 2x squared, and we need to figure out how many do we need, and in this case we need 9 and 9, which gives you 18 to keep it balanced. So I drew a model there just so you can see where we got the actual square from. Now once we have this part, now we can go ahead, divide both sides by 2, and you'll get x minus 3 squared equals 5. Then take the square root of both sides. You'll get x minus 3 equals plus or minus square root of 5. And then add 3 to both sides, and you'll get x equals 3 plus or minus square root, root 3, I think I meant to write. Sometimes when I do this pretty fast, I write the wrong. There you go. Okay, so I did draw the model, and like I said, with the model to begin with, we wouldn't know what we're trying to figure out is how many should go here. So that's where we got the purple from. And in this case, I'm going to do purple. So I know when I'm doing this, go make sure they line up. So there's 9 there, and then I have to do the same thing here to complete the square to make it a square shape. Alright, so then that's your final answer. So what I want you to do is I want you to try this one. You are going to get a pretty wild answer. Or actually, I'm going to do that one for you. Yeah, try this one. And then I want you to try this one. I did draw a model here to help you out. I'm going to do this one. Alright, so first what we want to do is we're going to subtract 9. And so I'm left with 3x squared minus 6x equals negative 9. Now just looking at this side, I'm going to factor out a negative 3. And I like to write it as x squared plus 2x, and then I put my blank because I know I need to have whatever amount needs to go here to complete my square needs to go there. Okay? And then whatever this is, I put a blank here because remember, I got to keep it balanced. So what I do to this side, I got to do to this side. So take this, divide by 2, you're going to get positive 1. And then if you were to take positive 1, so 2 divided by 2, and square it, you're still going to get 1. So that's why I wrote plus 1 here. But remember, it's really negative 3 times plus 1, so that's why I put negative 3 here. Because you got to keep it balanced, because it's not really 1, it's a 1 times negative 3. Now that I've got this, we already made x plus 1. When we did this, we got 1 right there. So now, divide both sides by negative 3. And I've got x plus 1 squared equals 4. Now I can take the square root of both sides. I'm going to get x plus 1 equals plus or minus 2. And then when you get here, we're going to subtract 1. But if you notice, this is plus or minus, and we can simplify this. So I'm going to take this plus. So take this equation, and you're going to get x equals plus 2. And then I'm going to take the minus, and I'm going to go minus 2. So when you break this up, and you subtract the 1 over, you're going to get x equals positive 1, or x equals negative 3. So this has two different options, so if you can simplify it, do that. Alright, I want you to go ahead and try this one, and then I did the last one here. So we're still doing the same thing. We're going to subtract 2. So I'm going to get negative 3x squared plus 9x equals negative 2. Now, just looking here, I'm going to factor out a negative 3. And this one's going to be a little tricky. I'm going to put my blank here, and I'm going to put a blank here. Now, you're still going to take this and divide by 2. So negative 3 divided by 2 is going to give you, or I'm sorry, you can just leave it like that. You could do a decimal, so I just left it as a decimal, or as a fraction, sorry. So now we've got a fraction here, so this is where it gets a little tricky, because when we divided this by 2, this is what we got. But now we need to square it. So when we square it, we're going to get 9/4. So we have to add 9/4 to both sides, but remember it's really a negative 3 times 9/4, which is going to give us a negative 27/4. So it looks a little weird because it's fractions, but it's still the same process. Okay, so now that we've got that, now if we were to divide a fraction, you're really multiplying by 1/3. So to get rid of this negative 3, because we would have to divide both sides by negative 3, but we can't divide by negative 3, so we're going to multiply by negative 1/3. And then that's going to get those to cancel out. And you're left with x minus 3/2 squared equals 35/12. And I just multiplied those going across. And then this is a negative, so it makes it positive. So now I've got this. Now I can take the square root of both sides. Once I take the square root, I've got x minus 3/2 equals plus or minus the square root of 105 and 36. And then once we get there, now we're going to go through and add 3/2 to both sides. And don't forget to put that plus minus sign. So I've got x equals 3/2 plus or minus square root of 105/6, because 36 simplifies to 6, so you only have 105 in there. So it looks a little complicated, but you can do this with fractions, but it is a little more complicated but still the same process. All right, go ahead. I want you to finish those problems, and then this is completing the square.